Winterfell had always been made of old things. Old stone, old smoke, old blood. So the sound of new voices in its yard struck like a thrown blade. Horns rang beneath a sky the color of steel, and the courtyard filled with the press of men in cloaks and mail, horses stamping, breath steaming from their nostrils as if the very air burned them from within. Banners snapped overhead, direwolf gray against winter white, but beneath them the lion had come, bright as fresh spilled gold. Jon Snow stood where shadows pooled under the archway, where he could watch without being watched too closely. He had lived his life on the edge of rooms, near doors that might close, near windows that looked out on a world that did not quite claim him. He knew every crack in Winterfell stones, every stain left by long-ago winters, and yet the arrival of the king made the castle feel suddenly unfamiliar, like a home with strangers sleeping in its beds. King Robert Baratheon rode in first, huge and laughing, his beard gone more gray than black, his eyes bright with a boy's delight at returning to something he remembered as better. He looked like a man who had once been carved from mountain rock and then softened by too many feasts. When he swung down from his saddle, the earth itself seemed to accept the weight of him. He embraced Eddard Stark with both arms, crushing him as if to prove that the years had not taken everything. Men cheered around them, and Jon felt it in his bones. The king's joy, the castle's careful welcome, the undercurrent of fear no one dared name. Robb Stark stood near his father, shoulders squared, the set of his jaw too practiced for a boy of 14. His wolf-head cloak pin held fast at his throat, and he returned the king's booming words with the courtesy of a young lord already learning to measure his smile. Jon watched him with a private ache, pride and envy braided tight. Robb belonged at the center of this. Jon belonged where the wall's shadow kept him. Then the queen passed through the gate, and the cold sharpened. Cersei Lannister did not laugh. She did not need to. Her gaze swept Winterfell like a candle flame licking over parchment. And when it touched Jon, he felt, absurdly, as if she had counted him and found him wanting. Ser Jaime Lannister rode at her side, golden as harvest, his face open and easy, his smile polished into something men trusted too readily. Behind them came their children, pretty, pale, and distant, followed by a hound-faced knight with dead eyes and a brutality that did not bother to hide. Theon Greyjoy drifted through it all with the careless grace of someone who had never had to worry about where he stood. He leaned toward Jon as the crowd surged, his mouth curling. "Look at them," Theon murmured, as if speaking of fine hunting dogs. "The king, the queen, the lion with his shining claws. Winterfell will stink of Southron perfume for a moon's turn." Jon did not answer. He was watching his father. Ned's face was ca. Elam, but it was a calm Jon knew from long winters and hard decisions. It was the stillness before a storm. Benjen Stark appeared at Jon's shoulder like a ghost made solid by the cold, his black cloak lost among the darker stone. He had that same stark stillness, but there was something restless in him too, as if the world beyond the wall called to his blood. "You're staring," Benjen said quietly. Jon swallowed. "I'm watching." Benjen's mouth twitched, not quite a smile. "A good habit. Better than dreaming." Jon's eyes followed the king's hand as it clapped Ned's shoulder again, hard enough to make armor ring. Robert laughed, and the laughter echoed off Winterfell's old walls as if the castle tried to remember how to be young. Jon watched, and in the watching he felt something settle inside him, an understanding like ice forming on black water. This visit was not only a reunion, it was a turning. The great hall blazed as if Winterfell had dragged summer indoors by force. Torches hissed in their sconces, and the long fires down the center threw heat at the stone until it sweated faintly, making the air taste of smoke and fat and spiced wine. The king's men filled the benches, loud with drink and travel, and Robert Baratheon's voice rode above them all like a war horn. He toasted old battles and older friends. He spoke of Lyanna Stark with a tenderness that made men look away, embarrassed by the nakedness of it. When he spoke of war, his eyes lit. When he spoke of peace, he drank as if it were a bitter draught. Ned Stark sat beside him, courteous and contained, a man holding his own heart behind a locked door. Catelyn Stark sat on Ned's other side, and Jon felt her absence from his life even across the hall. She did not look at him. She did not need to. The distance was its own declaration, as familiar as the winter wind. Jon's place was at the lower benches, close enough to see everything, far enough to be forgotten when it mattered. Benjen sat with him, and Theon lounged like a cat by a warm hearth, drinking and smiling at girls who pretended not to see him. Prince Joffrey's eyes found Jon more than once, sharp and disdainful. It was not that Joffrey knew anything about him, only that Joffrey had the instinct to recognize a person he could safely look down upon. When the music rose, harps and pipes and the stamping rhythm of hands on tables, Benjen leaned toward Jon, his voice softened by the din. "You're leaving with us," he said. The words hit Jon like a shove. "I'm not," Jon answered before he could stop himself. Benjen blinked. "Not." Jon stared into his cup, seeing the firelight tremble on the wine's dark surface. "Not the wall. Not now." Theon's smile sharpened as he listened, as if this were a game for his amusement. Benjen's gaze held Jon steady, black cloak and black eyes, the watch's shadow already in him. "You said you wanted it. You said you wanted a place where no one would call me bastard," Jon finished, his voice low. He felt heat rise in his face, anger at himself for the words, for the weakness beneath them. "And I do. But Robb will need men he can trust. The North will need you?" Theon put in lightly, eyes bright. "Or you need the North to need you?" Jon's hand tightened around his cup until his knuckles paled. He looked at Theon, and for a moment he imagined the sound Theon's teeth would make against stone. Benjen's hand came down on Jon's forearm, firm. "Watch your temper," he murmured. Then, to Jon alone, "If you stay in a world that will never let you forget what you are." Jon's eyes flicked to the high table. Robb was watching him openly now, no shame in it, no distance. Robb's face was serious, as if he already sensed the shape of what was coming. "I know what I am," Jon said, "and I know what he is. He's my brother." Benjen's expression softened in a way Jon had rarely seen. "Your brother is a Stark. He will have bannermen. He will have lords. You will have a knife in your back, if you're unlucky." Jon's voice dropped further, hidden under the roar of Robert's laughter. "Then I'll have my eyes open." Benjen studied him a long moment. Around them the hall swelled with song, and Southron knights toasted northern girls who smiled too brightly. Up at the high table, Sansa Stark sat like a painted doll beside the Queen's ladies, while Arya Stark fidgeted as if her skin didn't fit. Benjen finally leaned back. "If you mean it," he said, "tell your father before we go. Don't let him hear it from me." Jon's throat tightened. He glanced at Ned, at the quiet line of his mouth, the weight in his eyes. The king clapped Ned on the back again, speaking of handship and duty, and Ned's smile was thin as paper. Jon felt the old life behind him crack, just slightly, like ice under a cautious step. Dawn came in pale and reluctant, the sky bruised purple above Winterfell's towers. Frost rimed the yard, making the packed earth crunch under boots. The air smelled of iron and pine smoke, and the first clang of practice blades sounded like a bell calling men to prayer. Robb Stark fought with the hunger of someone trying to prove something even to himself. He moved too fast at first, shoulders tense, his cuts heavy-handed, and Jon met him cleanly every time, parrying, turning, letting Robb's strength slide past rather than answering it head-on. They had trained together for years, but this morning there was something different in it, a seriousness that made the yard feel smaller. Ser Roderick Castle paced nearby, his mustache stiff with cold. "Feet," he barked. "Feet, boy. You'll die on your own boots if you plant them like fence posts." Robb grunted and came again. Jon stepped in close, pressed Robb's blade down, and tapped the blunted edge against Robb's ribs. Once, twice, before slipping away. Robb's cheeks flushed, partly from exertion, partly from irritation. "You're enjoying this?" Jon's mouth twitched. You're learning. Theon laughed from where he leaned against a post, all easy arrogance. The bastard schooling the heir, he drawled. 7 save us. The world truly is turning. Robb ignored him. Jon tried to. But the words still sank their hooks in, because they were not only Theon's. They were the world's. Bran sat with Arya on a barrel near the edge, his face bright with fascination. Arya mimed sword swings with a stick, her tongue between her teeth, as if she could will herself into the fight by imitation. Ghost prowled near Jon's boots, white fur Stark against the gray yard, eyes like red coals watching everything. Robb came in with a faint left, then tried to turn it into a quick strike at Jon's shoulder. Jon read it before it happened. Robb's tell was the way his right hand tightened, and Jon stepped inside the arc, shoulder to shoulder, and bumped Robb off balance. Robb stumbled, caught himself, and lowered his practice sword with a sharp breath. "All right," he said, voice rough. "Enough."
Ser Rodrik grunted.
If it were enough in war, the dead would rise to thank us. Robb waited until Ser Rodrik had turned away to shout at a squire. Then he stepped closer to Jon, lowering his voice so Theon could not easily hear. "Benjen told me," Robb said. Jon's pulse jumped. "He shouldn't have." Robb's eyes held his. "He did. Are you staying?" Jon's fingers tightened around the hilt of his practiced sword. He felt suddenly young, suddenly unsure, as if the walls of Winterfell were listening. "Yes," Jon said. "If you'll have me." Robb didn't hesitate. "I want you. I need you." His gaze flicked toward the castle, toward the great keep where their father's decisions lived. "Father is going south, and if the king truly means to name him hand." "He does," Jon said. He could feel it like thunder in the distance. Robb swallowed. "Then, Winterfell will be mine to hold. I'll have lords looking at me like they're weighing grain. I'll have mother." He stopped, jaw tightening, as if the word itself was a wound. Jon understood without being told. Catelyn's gaze had always slid past him like he was a stain on the stone. If Ned left, her cold would be the only warmth Jon could count on from her. "I can help," Jon said simply. Robb's shoulders eased, just a fraction, as if someone had loosened a strap around his chest. "Good," he murmured, "because I don't want to fight alone." A shout rang out from the gate. A stable boy ran across the yard, breath puffing. "My lord!" he cried toward the great keep. "The king wants Lord Stark now." Robb's face tightened again, and Jon felt the day tilt under his feet, like a ship catching a sudden wind. The godswood was colder than the yard, not in air but in feeling. The tall sentinels of oak and ironwood kept their own counsel, and the heart tree's white bark shone against the dark like bone. Its red leaves fell slow, turning as they drifted, landing in the black water of the pool where they floated like dropped coins. Ned Stark stood beneath the carved face, hand resting on the pommel of ice as if to remind himself it was there. He did not look like a man about to leave his home. He looked like a man about to walk into a pit. Jon approached with measured steps. Ghost moved with him, silent as smoke over snow. Ned turned his head, and for a moment Jon saw the weight behind his father's eyes. Years of duty, of choices, of names never spoken. "Benjen tells me you mean to stay," Ned said. Jon swallowed. "Yes." Ned's gaze flicked over Jon's face as if searching for something he feared to find. Then his eyes settled, and his voice went quieter. "Why?" Jon had practiced answers in his head, sharp and clean. None of them survived the godswood. "Because I don't want to run," Jon said. "Not from who I am. Not from—" He hesitated, then forced the words through. "Not from Mother's anger. Not from the whispers. And because Robb will need me." Ned's mouth tightened. "Robb will have bannermen. He'll have men who swore to House Stark," Jon replied. "I swore to him." The words hung between them. Somewhere in the branches above, a raven croaked, harsh as a warning. Ned's eyes softened, not with tenderness alone, but with something like pain. "The wall is a hard place," he said slowly, "but it is simple in certain ways. You would have been safe from southern eyes. Safe from... He stopped himself. Jon felt a cold line trace down his spine, as if the heart tree had breathed against his neck. From the king. Ned's gaze snapped to his sharp. For a heartbeat, the mask slipped, and Jon glimpsed something fierce beneath. Protectiveness, fear, and a memory that tasted of blood. Robert sees what he wants, Ned said at last, voice controlled. He sees a friend's son and thinks it enough. But the court is full of eyes that do not look away so easily. Jon's throat tightened. I'll stay out of their reach. Here, in the north. Ned studied him a long moment, then nodded once, as if accepting a blade offered hilt first. If you stay, he said, you do not stay idle. I won't. You will drill the garrison with Ser Roderick. You will learn the accounts with Maester Luwin. You will sit with Robb when the bannermen come, and you will listen more than you speak. Ned's voice hardened. You will be his strength, not his scandal. Jon's hands curled into fists. Yes, father. Ned's gaze went distant for an instant, as if he looked through Jon and saw someone else. Someone long dead, someone loved. Then he stepped forward and rested his hand on Jon's shoulder, heavy and sure. I have not always given you what you deserved, Ned said quietly. I have given you what I could. Jon felt something break open behind his ribs. You gave me a home. Ned's hand tightened briefly, then fell away. His posture straightened, and the Lord returned in full. Guard him, Ned said. Guard your brother. I will, Jon promised. Across the pool, Catelyn Stark stood rigid. Her hands clasped so tightly the knuckles whitened. She did not come closer. She did not speak. But Jon felt her presence like a chill, and he knew the moment Ned left, that chill would be all the sharper. When the king left, Winterfell seemed to exhale and then hold its breath, as if uncertain whether the air would ever warm again. The yard filled with the creak of wagons and the jingle of harness, the sharp calls of men organizing a procession too large for northern roads. Robert Baratheon rode at the front, laughing even as he complained of the cold, and Ned Stark rode beside him, grim and composed. The sight of his father in southern company struck Jon strangely, like seeing a wolf among hounds. Sansa sat in a wheelhouse with the queen's ladies, her posture perfect even as tears shone in her eyes. She lifted her hand in a delicate wave, and Jon saw in her the desperate hope of a girl who believed stories were true if she wanted them hard enough. Arya, forced into the same conveyance, leaned out with fury in every line of her small body, glaring at the world as if it had insulted her personally. Bran clung to the side of his brother's horse for as long as he was allowed, cheeks red with cold and excitement, while Rickon wailed in Catelyn's arms until even his own voice exhausted him. Jon did not go to the yard to say farewell. He stood with Robb on the battlements above the gatehouse, looking down at the long line stretching away, southbound like a river of steel and silk. Robb's face was set, but his eyes were bright. Jon knew that look. It was the look of someone forcing himself not to beg. Catelyn stood below, wrapped in fur, her face turned toward Ned. When he looked back, her expression softened in a way Jon rarely saw, and for a moment the distance between husband and wife was a thread you could almost touch. Then the wagons moved and the moment snapped. As the procession passed under the gate, Jon caught one last glimpse of Ned Stark's face. His father's eyes lifted briefly, searching the battlements. When they found Jon, the look was not a farewell alone. It was instruction. It was warning. It was love made stern. Then the banners vanished beyond the walls, and the road swallowed them. Silence fell heavy as snow. The yard emptied. The last hoofbeats faded. Robb's hands rested on the cold stone. He did not move for a long time. "They're gone," he said finally, voice flat. Jon's breath steamed in front of him. "Not forever." Robb's mouth twisted. "Everything changes when they go south." Jon watched the empty road, the gray line cutting through the white fields beyond the castle. He thought of the queen's eyes, the prince's sneer, the bright lion banners. He thought of the king's laughter and the weight behind Ned's calm. Yes, Jon said. It does. Ghost paced behind them, soft paws on stone, restless as if he sensed the same shift. Below, the gates were already closing, iron and oak grinding together, sealing Winterfell against the world. Jon felt the sound in his bones like the beginning of a prison or the beginning of a fortress. Winterfell stones remembered every footstep. They remembered the little feet of children and the heavy tread of men, the scrape of armor and the soft padding of wolves. They remembered, too, secrets, whispers in passages, kisses in hidden corners, crimes committed where no one thought to look.
Bran Stark loved heights.
He loved the way the world shrank beneath him when he climbed, loved the thrill of standing above grown men and looking down on their heads. He climbed the broken tower because it was there, because it called to him like a dare. Jon found him by chance. He told himself it was chance, though later he would wonder whether ghosts had guided him. He was cutting through a lesser-used corridor when he heard the faint scuff of boots on stone above, quick and light. "Bran!" Jon called up softly. No answer, only the quiet scrape again. Higher. Jon's stomach tightened. He started up the stairwell, the air colder as he climbed. Dust lay thick on the steps, undisturbed for moons, but there were fresh marks, small footprints, too narrow for any grown man. "Bran!" Jon hissed, sharper now. "Get down here." The boy's head appeared above, hair wild, eyes bright with mischief. "Don't tell," Bran whispered, grinning. Jon's annoyance flared. "You'll break your neck." Bran's grin widened as if that were part of the fun. He vanished upward again. Jon climbed faster, boots thudding more loudly now. He reached the upper landing just as Bran squeezed through a gap in a half-crumbled wall, into the chamber beyond. Jon followed and froze. Through the split in the masonry, he saw them. Cersei Lannister, pale as milk in the slanting light, hair loose like molten gold. Ser Jaime Lannister, hands on her as if he owned the world. Their faces were close, their mouths moving in a way that left no doubt. The chamber smelled of perfume and sweat, a scent entirely wrong for Winterfell's old air. Bran was at the window ledge, eyes wide, not understanding what he had stumbled upon, but understanding instinctively that it was forbidden. Cersei's head snapped up. Jaime turned with a speed that made Jon think of a cat striking. For a heartbeat, everything held still. Jon's mouth went dry. He had no place in this, no power, no right, no protection. He was a bastard in a northern ruin staring into a southern sin. Jaime's gaze flicked past Bran and landed on Jon, and Jon felt, in that moment, how dangerous beauty could be. Jaime's face was calm, almost gentle, as he stepped toward the window where Bran perched. Bran laughed nervously. "I won't tell," he said, as if secrets were toys to be traded. "Of course you won't," Jaime murmured. Jon moved, instinct screaming. "Bran!" Jaime's hand shot out. Not violent, not hurried, just certain. Bran's body tipped backward into the empty air. Jon lunged, fingers catching cloth. Too little, too late. For a breath Jon felt Bran's weight, the pull of a child falling into nothing, and then the fabric slipped through his GR. SP like water and Bran was gone. Jon's shout tore out of him, raw. He stumbled to the edge and looked down, heart hammering so hard he thought it would split him. Below, far below, the yard spun. Snow drifted. A small broken shape lay crumpled on the ground. Behind Jon, the chamber was silent. He turned slowly. Jaime stood with his hands still raised, as if the act had been nothing more than pushing a door shut. Cersei's eyes were flat, unreadable. Jaime's voice was quiet. "It was an accident," he said. Jon stared at him, and hatred rose like bile. He could not draw steel, not here, not against the king's queen's brother. He could not scream the truth without being crushed beneath it. But he could remember. "I saw you," Jon said, each word scraped out of stone. Jaime's smile was almost kind. "Then remember carefully," he replied. "Remember what you are." Jon's fists clenched until his nails bit skin. Ghost's distant howl rose from somewhere below, and Winterfell's stones seemed to drink the sound. The world narrowed to a bed and a boy who would not wake. Bran's chamber smelled of crushed herbs and sweat and smoke from the hearth that never went out. Maester Luwin moved like a man trying to stitch time back together, pressing poultices to shattered bones, murmuring prayers to gods he did not believe in. Bran lay pale against the furs, his lashes dark against his cheeks, lips parted as if he meant to speak and could not find the words. Catelyn did not leave him. She sat at the bedside with her hands wrapped around Bran's fingers as if she could tether him to life by sheer will. Her eyes were ringed with red, her hair loose, her posture too rigid, like a bough pulled back so far it might snap. Robb stood near the hearth, fists clenched, helplessness written across his face in lines too old for him. Arya hovered close to the door, silent, her usual restlessness crushed by fear. Rickon cried until he fell asleep against a nurse's shoulder. Sansa prayed under her breath, eyes squeezed shut as if that could shut out the image of blood. Jon stood behind Robb, a presence meant to be steady. But inside him the scene in the broken tower replayed over and over. Jaime's calm hand, Bran's sudden weight, the empty air. "You were with him," Robb said at last, voice raw. It was not accusation. It was desperation, like a man grabbing for anything solid. "You were there." Jon's throat tightened. "I was too late." Robb's jaw worked. "What happened?" Jon looked at Catelyn. Her eyes were fixed on Bran's face, unblinking. If Jon spoke the truth now, it would tear Winterfell apart from within. It would pit Stark against Crown, Wolf against Lion, when Ned was already riding into the lion's den. It would make Bran's fall not an accident but a crime, and crimes demanded answers paid in blood. "I don't know," Jon lied, and the lie tasted like ash. He slipped. Robb stared at him, and Jon feared for a moment that Robb could see the truth anyway. But Robb's eyes were too full of grief to hold suspicion. Catelyn's voice came soft and broken without her looking up. "He would not slip," she whispered. "He climbed like a squirrel. Her breath hitched. "He would not slip." Maester Luwin said gently, "My lady, leave us." Catelyn snapped, sudden fierceness flaring. "Leave us all." Servants retreated. Arya was pulled reluctantly away. Sansa followed, tears streaking her cheeks. Robb hesitated, then stepped back too, as if his mother's grief had teeth. Jon stayed, because he did not know where else to put himself. Catelyn finally lifted her eyes. They landed on Robb first, softened, pained. Then, inevitably, they slid to Jon. In her gaze, Jon felt all the years between them. He felt the silent blame she carried for his existence, the way she had carved him out of her life and left him standing in the cold. But now there was something else there too, something raw and ugly. If her son died, would she finally find the courage to hate Jon openly? Or would grief wallow even that? "Go," Catelyn said, voice flat, as if she spoke to a stranger. "You have no place here." Jon's heart hardened around the lie he carried. He bowed his head once, not in submission but in acknowledgement of reality. "As you command," he said. He left the chamber, and the corridor outside felt colder than the gods would. Ghost followed him, silent as snow, and when Jon leaned against the stone and closed his eyes, he realized his hands were shaking. Not from fear of Jaime Lannister, from fear of what truth would cost. The night the assassin came, Winterfell's silence broke like glass. Jon had been half asleep in his own chamber when Ghost's growl woke him, low, vibrating. A sound that made the hairs on Jon's arms lift. Before Jon could sit up fully, Ghost was on his feet, ears forward, eyes fixed on the door as if he could see through wood. A scream tore through the castle, thin, high, and full of terror. Jon was out of bed in an instant, grabbing for the sword by his wall. He flung the door open and ran, bare feet slapping cold stone, ghost white wolf at his side. Torches flared in the corridor as men stumbled out of rooms, half-armored, confused. Another scream, Catelyn's voice. Jon's blood turned to ice. He reached Bran's chamber and found the door half open, a shadow moving inside. Jon shoved it wide and surged in. The scene was madness lit by firelight. Catelyn was on the floor beside the bed, hair loose, face contorted with fury and fear as she grappled with a man in dark cloth. The assassin's knife flashed, Valyrian steel, pale as ice, its edge catching the light with a cruel beauty. Catelyn's hands clung to the assassin's wrist, trying to keep the blade from Bran's throat. The assassin's other hand shoved at her face, nails scratching her cheek, and Catelyn snarled like a cornered animal. Jon did not think. He moved. He crossed the room in 2 strides, grabbed the assassin from behind, and hauled him back. The man twisted, fast, and the dagger slashed. Jon felt it bite shallow across his forearm, a sharp burn. Catelyn surged up, furious, clawing for the weapon again. The assassin wrenched free and lunged toward the bed. Summer, who had been lying at Bran's feet, exploded upward in a blur of fur and teeth. The dire wolf hit the assassin's leg with a savage snap, tearing cloth and flesh. The man screamed, this time not Catelyn's, but a high, startled sound, and stumbled. Jon slammed his shoulder into him and drove him into the wall hard enough to rattle the room. The dagger clattered to the floor. Robb burst in with guards behind him, sword drawn, face wild. Bran! Here! Jon barked. Get the dagger! A guard lunged for it, but Ghost was faster. The white wolf's jaws snapped down on the assassin's throat with a wet crunch that ended the struggle in a heartbeat. Silence fell abrupt and thick, broken only by Catelyn's ragged breathing and the crackle of the hearth. Catelyn stared at the dead man, then at the dagger on the floor. Her hands shook as she reached for it, fingers hovering above the hilt as if afraid it might burn her. Robb stepped closer, eyes darting over Bran, over Jon's bleeding arm, over Summer's bloodied mouth. Who? He began, voice hoarse. Who would? Catelyn's eyes lifted, and in them was something feral. Someone who wants my son dead, she whispered. Jon looked at the dagger, at the fine craftsmanship, at the way it seemed too precious a thing to be in a common killer's hand. He felt the lie he carried from the broken tower twist tighter, and now another truth pressed against it, sharp and urgent. This was not random. Winterfell had been touched by southern hands, and those hands had left poison behind. Catelyn's gaze slid to Jon. For once it was not cold. It was startled, almost unwillingly grateful. Her mouth opened, as if a word might come. Then she closed it again, the old distance snapping back into place like a door barred. Robb turned toward Jon, eyes bright with a new kind of fear. This means war, he said quietly, as if naming it might make it real. Jon stared at the dead assassin, at Ghost's bloodied muzzle, at Bran's still face. It means something, Jon answered, and we need to know what. They gathered in Maester Luwin's chambers as the castle woke into a new kind of dread. The room smelled of ink and parchment, of dried herbs and old leather. A single lamp burned on the table, its light turning the dagger's pale steel into something almost alive. Catelyn held it as if it were a snake she could not drop for fear it might strike. Maester Luwin's fingers traced the hilt with careful respect. Valyrian steel, he murmured. Fine work, very fine. Ser Roderick stood with his hands clasped behind his back, jaw tight. Fine enough to kill a child. Robb's face was set, but his eyes were haunted. He kept glancing toward the door, as if expecting the assassin to walk back and smiling. Jon stood at his shoulder, his forearm wrapped in linen, blood already stiffening beneath. Theon leaned against the wall near the doorway, trying to look bored and failing. His usual easy swagger had been replaced by a taut alertness, the posture of a man remembering he was not truly safe in this castle if knives came in the night. Catelyn's voice was raw. Someone sent him. Maester Luwin nodded slowly. No man of Winterfell would carry such a blade. No common cutthroat would possess it. It is a weapon of wealth. Robb's hands clenched. The Lannisters. The word fell into the room like a stone in water, sending ripples through every face. Catelyn's eyes flashed. Your father must be warned, she said at once. At once. Jon's heart beat harder. He thought of Ned riding south, surrounded by lions, walking willingly into a court that smiled while it sharpened its teeth. "Yes," Jon said, before anyone could stop him. "Send a raven." Maester Luwin hesitated. "My lady, my lord." "Such an accusation." "It is not an accusation," Catelyn snapped. "It is a truth." She looked at the dagger again, as if it had spoken. "And if it is truth, then my husband is already in danger." Robb's voice went tight. "He can handle danger." Catelyn's gaze softened briefly at that, then hardened again. "Even wolves can be trapped," she said. Jon's mind raced, pulling at threads. The dagger, the assassin, the Queen's cold gaze, Jaime's calm hands, Bran's broken body. It was all one tapestry, and the pattern was Lannister gold. But another thought pressed in too. If Ned received word that the Lannisters had sent a killer to Winterfell, he would move. He would challenge. He would do what he always did, step into the fire because duty demanded it. Jon looked at Robb. Robb met his gaze, and Jon saw it there. The same understanding dawning. The North had been pulled into a game it had never wanted to play. "We need more than a raven," Jon said quietly. Ser Roderick's eyes narrowed. "Meaning?" Jon forced himself to speak like a man, not a boy. "We need to be ready. If father falls." Catelyn's head snapped toward him, fury flickering. "He will not." Jon held her gaze steady. "If he is delayed, if he is trapped, if the king dies, if anything happens that leaves Winterfell Robb will be lord, and lords will test him." Robb inhaled sharply, as if the words were both burden and truth. "You think they'll come for us?" Jon looked at the dagger again. "They already have." Maester Luwin's hands hovered over the raven cage. His face was pale. "Very well," he said softly. "We send word to Lord Stark." Catelyn leaned forward, voice fierce. "And I will go to him." Robb stared. "Mother!" "I will not sit here while my husband is surrounded by lions," Catelyn said, each word cutting. "I will take Ser Roderick. We will go quietly. We will learn what we can. And we will put the truth in your father's hands." Robb's face tightened with fear and anger, but beneath it Jon saw something else. The first stirrings of the loneliness that came with command. Jon stepped closer to Robb, shoulder brushing his. "If she goes," Jon murmured, "then we become the North." Robb's jaw clenched. "Then we become the North," he echoed, as if tasting the words. Outside, a raven croaked, an ugly sound in the morning quiet, like laughter from something that did not care who lived or died. The day Catelyn left, Winterfell felt like a wound trying to close around a blade still lodged inside it. She rode out with Ser Roderick at dawn, cloaked and hooded, taking only a small escort so the castle would not look like it was bleeding men. Robb watched from the steps of the Great Keep, face hard, saying little. Jon stood beside him, and for the first time he understood what it meant to watch someone you loved ride into danger and not have the right to follow. Afterward, Robb did what Ned Stark had taught him. He took his place. He held court in the Great Hall, beneath direwolf banners that looked down like old gods. The benches were not full the way they had been for the king, but the men who came carried a heavier silence. Lords and castellans, sworn swords and gray-haired advisors. Each one came to see what Winterfell looked like without its lord. Greatjon Umber arrived like a storm, huge and loud, complaining about roads and cold and southern trouble as if his voice alone could keep the world in line. Roose Bolton came quieter, pale eyes taking in everything, saying little, listening too well. Others came, the Mormont's men, a messenger from the Karstarks, Tallhearts and Serwins and Hornwoods. Each face another weight on Robb's shoulders. Jon stood to Robb's right, as Ned had commanded. Not in a lord's place, but close enough to be seen, to be counted. He felt eyes on him, curious, measuring, sometimes contemptuous. He met them all with the stillness he had learned from his father and the anger he had learned from living. Robb spoke of Bran's injury, of vigilance, of readiness. He did not speak of Lannisters. Not yet. He kept his words careful, as if the hall itself might carry rumors south. Then the raven came. It flew in through an open window, wings beating hard, feathers ruffled by a long flight. It circled once, then landed awkwardly on the table before Maester Luwin's empty chair, croaking harshly as if offended by being made a messenger of doom. Every voice in the hall died. Jon's pulse slammed in his ears. Robb stepped forward, hand outstretched, and a steward moved to take the scroll from the raven's leg. The parchment shook slightly as it was passed to Robb, as if the words inside were alive and trying to get out. Robb's eyes scanned the message. Jon watched the moment Robb's expression tightened, not with surprise, but with grim confirmation, as if the last hope had finally been strangled. "What is it?" Greatjon Umber demanded, impatience cracking through his usual bluster. Robb's mouth opened. For a heartbeat no sound came, only breath, thin and sharp. "Father," Robb managed. He swallowed. "Father has been seized." The hall erupted shouts, curses, the scrape of benches as men surged to their feet. Names flew like stones. Lannister, King, treason, war. Roose Bolton's pale eyes narrowed. Greatjon Umber's hand went to the hilt of his sword as if he might cut the very air. Jon felt the room tilt, the world shifting into a new shape. Robb lifted his voice again, higher, forcing command into it the way a man forced a blade into a wound. Silence. Took a moment, but the hall obeyed. Wolves listened to their wolf. Robb's chest rose and fell. He looked down at the parchment, then up at the faces before him. Men who would either make him a king or break him like kindling. "They have taken Eddard Stark," Robb said, and the words rang like a bell struck too hard. "The hand of the king, my father." Jon's hands clenched at his sides, the old rage rising. Rage at Jaime's calm smile, at Cersei's cold eyes, at the way the South took what it wanted and called it law. Robb's gaze flicked to Jon, just a heartbeat, and in it was everything they had spoken in the training yard. "I don't want to fight alone." Jon stepped closer, shoulder nearly touching Robb's. He did not speak. He did not need to. His presence was a vow. Robb turned back to the hall, and his voice steadied into something iron. "We will call the banners," he said. "We will send riders to every holdfast, every hall sworn to House Stark. We will march south, and we will bring my father home." The hall roared then, not with drunken cheer, but with the deep, fierce sound of men accepting war. Jon stood in the heart of it, and somewhere deep inside him, beneath the bastard's bitterness and the boy's fear, something else rose, cold and clear as a drawn sword. Winter was coming. And this time, Robb Stark would not face it alone. The shouting did not end when the first oaths were sworn. It only changed shape, turning from shock into argument, from argument into plans, from plans into the hard insistence of men who knew exactly what war would cost and meant to pay it anyway. Robb Stark stood beneath the direwolf banners as if they were a mantle laid on his shoulders by the dead. The hall seemed smaller without Eddard Stark seated at its head, smaller and meaner, crowded with bodies and voices and the smell of wet wool. Men pressed forward to be heard. Greatjon Umber's roar cut through them all, demanding blood before the last word of the raven had stopped echoing. Others spoke of caution, of sending envoys, of waiting for clearer word from the south. Roose Bolton said almost nothing, but when he did his voice slid into the spaces between other men's words like a thin knife. Jon stood at Robb's right, where his father had placed him. He could feel the weight of eyes on him. Some curious, some disapproving, some measuring. It did not matter. Robb's gaze found him again and again, brief flashes of anger, as if the sight of Jon's face steadied something that wanted to break loose inside him. Maester Luwin spread maps across the high table, pinning corners with cups and candlesticks. The parchment showed the north in ink lines and tiny keeps, but Jon saw it as roads and cold rivers, as marsh and mountain, as the long empty distances where riders might die unseen. "We send ravens first," Robb said, and his voice surprised Jon. Not loud, but firm enough to make the hall tilt toward silence. "To every bannerman, Karstark, Manderley, Hornwood, Serwyn, Tallheart, Glover, Mormont, to every holdfast sworn to us. They will come. Greatjon Umber slammed his fist on a table below. And while they come, the lions sharpen their teeth on your father's bones. Robb's jaw tightened. While they come, we make ready. We gather grain. We count arrows. We set smiths to work night and day. We do not ride south with half a host and prayers for the rest. Some men muttered approval. Others muttered impatience. Jon leaned close enough that only Robb could hear him. If you rush, they choose the ground, he murmured. If you wait too long, they choose the time. Give them neither. Robb's eyes flicked to him, and he nodded once, small, almost invisible. Ser Roderick Castle moved among the lords like a man carrying a funeral shroud. He distributed sealed letters, orders for musters, summons for men, commands that would send boys from warm hearths to cold graves. Jon watched the wax stamps pressed with the direwolf, watched hands take them, watched faces harden as duty settled in. Below the table, gray wind paced in restless circles, hair bristling, sensing the tension as if it were storm sent. Ghost stood quieter at Jon's heel, white head lifted, red eyes intent. The two wolves regarded each other with the wary respect of beasts who understood they were about to be loosed into blood. Robb raised his voice again. Winterfell will not be left empty, he said. We will not invite another knife in the night. The mention of the assassin drew a ripple through the hall, a shiver of remembered fear. Jon's bandaged forearm itched beneath linen. We set a stronger garrison, Robb continued. Ser Roderick, 200 men remain. Maester Luwin, ravens fly day and night. No stranger enters these walls without being seen and named. And if any man here thinks to take advantage of our absence. His gaze swept the hall, daring anyone to meet it. He will find Winterfell still has teeth. Jon watched Greatjon Umber grin, pleased by the bite in Robb's tone. Roose Bolton's pale eyes narrowed a fraction, as if noting a change in a ledger. Plans layered over plans until the hall felt like a forge. By the time the lords began to file out into the gray daylight, the first riders were already saddling horses in the yard, ravens already screaming as they were loosed into the sky. Robb remained at the high table, hands braced on the map. When the last of the lesser voices faded and only the crackle of torches remained, he finally exhaled. One sharp breath like a man taking in air before diving under black water. Jon stepped closer. You did well. Robb's mouth twitched, not quite a smile. I sounded like father. You sounded like Winterfell, Jon said. Robb's eyes went distant. Father always made it look simple, he whispered. Jon did not lie to comfort him. It was never simple. Robb's gaze returned, and for a heartbeat it was not lord to sworn man, not heir to bastard, but brother to brother. Two boys standing at the edge of something that would eat them if they hesitated. Come with me, Robb said. He left the hall through a side door, and Jon followed without question. The crypts swallowed sound the way snow swallowed footsteps. The air below Winterfell tasted of earth and old stone, of damp and time. Torches flared against black, throwing trembling light over rows of statues. Stark kings with stone wolves at their feet, swords across their laps, eyes carved stern as judgment. Robb descended with the torch held high. Jon followed, the darkness pressing close around them like a cloak pulled tight. Their wolves padded behind, claws clicking softly on stone. Robb stopped at Lyanna Stark's statue, the young woman carved in cold beauty, stone flowers laid at her feet by hands that still remembered her. The torchlight made her face seem almost alive and almost sorrowful, which was a trick of flame and nothing more. Yet Jon felt his throat tighten all the same. Robb stared up at her. When we were little, he said quietly, Father would bring us down here and tell us the names. He'd say they were watching, that they would know if we forgot who we were. Jon's voice came low. He brought you, and me. Robb's gaze slid to him. He swallowed. Jon, tell me the truth. The words landed heavy. Jon's heart thudded once, hard enough to hurt. Robb's eyes were red-rimmed, exhausted. "You were with Bran," he said. "You were there when he fell. You told me he slipped. You told Mother he slipped." His voice tightened on the word. "You don't lie well. You never have." Jon looked away, and the torchlight skittered over stone faces. In the silence of the crypts, lies felt louder. "I lied because I didn't know what it would do," Jon said. His voice sounded rough, scraped raw. "I lied because Father was riding into the south and I thought, if I speak, it becomes war before we're ready. If I speak, it makes Bran's fall. A reason." Robb's jaw flexed. "And now," Jon's fingers curled. Ghost's breath was soft at his side, warm against the cold air. "Now Father is in their hands," Jon said. "Now war is coming whether we wish it or not." Robb waited, torch held steady, its smoke curling toward the low ceiling like a question. Jon forced himself to meet Robb's eyes. "It was Ser Jaime Lannister," he said. The words did not echo, but they seemed to settle into the stone, into the statues, into the very bones of Winterfell. Robb's face went still, as if the life had been struck out of it. For a heartbeat, he looked like a child hearing of death. Then something changed. It moved behind his eyes like a wolf waking. Robb's voice caught. He swallowed hard. "He pushed him." Jon nodded once. "Bran climbed the broken tower. He found them together, Jaime Lannister and Queen Cersei Lannister. He did not describe more than he must. The ugliness of it did not need more words. Jaime saw him, and he put him out the window like tossing a cup." Robb's hand tightened on the torch so hard Jon thought the wood might crack. "Why didn't you kill him?" "Because I'm not a fool," Jon snapped, anger flaring to cover the shame beneath. "Because I'm not a Stark in name, and even if I were, I'd still be one boy in a tower against the King's Queen's brother in the King's own party. I'd have died, and then what? Bran would still be broken. Father would still ride south blind." Robb's breathing went heavy. He turned away, staring up at Lyanna's stone face as if asking her what to do with such hatred. "Mother?" Robb whispered, and the word was not comfort but grief. She sat by Bran's bed and blamed herself for leaving him. She blamed everyone. His voice cracked, and he bit it off, ashamed of the sound. Jon's voice softened despite himself. "She doesn't know." Robb's head snapped back. "Do you think she wouldn't want to know?" He laughed once, sharp and humorless. "Do you think she'd spare the truth because it might hurt?" Jon felt the old wound between him and Catelyn ache. "She would use it like a knife," he said, "and it would cut everyone." Robb stared at him, and Jon saw it. The war inside him, duty grappling with fury. Finally Robb nodded, a hard jerk. "Then it stays here," Robb said, voice low. "Between us, between the stone and the wolves." His gaze turned fierce. "But I will not forget it. Not ever." Jon felt relief and dread twist together. "Neither will I." Robb stepped closer and gripped Jon's forearm, careful of the bandage. His hand was warm, steady. "You're my brother," he said. Jon's throat tightened. "I." Robb released him and looked back to Lyanna. "If Father dies," he said, voice barely above breath, "they'll say it was because he was honorable. They'll say the South ate him because he walked into it with open hands." Jon's eyes narrowed. "Then we walk into it with blades." Robb's mouth curled into something grim. He said, "blades." Above them, Winterfell stones held the cold. Around them, the dead watched with carved eyes that did not blink. And when they climbed back toward daylight, it felt as though they left boyhood in the crypts among the bones. While Winterfell hardened into war, Catelyn Stark moved through the south like a hunted thing. She had cut her hair and dirted her cloak. She rode with her hood up and her gaze lowered, forcing herself to look like a common woman traveling with an old knight. Ser Roderick Castle chafed beneath the disguise, his pride as stiff as his joints, but he obeyed her because fear had made her voice iron. King's Landing stank. It stank of fish rot and piss and smoke, of too many bodies pressed together under a sky that never felt clean. The city crawled around the red keep like ants around a carcass. and as Catelyn rode through its gates, she felt every eye as a potential blade. They entered by a lesser postern, guided by a man whose face she never clearly saw. The sound of the city swallowed them. Vendors hawking wares, children shrieking, the clang of smiths, the moan of distant prayers. Gold cloaks watched from corners, their spears upright, their eyes bored but ready. Catelyn kept her breathing slow. She had lived her life in a castle where men bowed when she passed. Here she was no one, and that was both safety and insult. In a narrow alley where the sun struggled to reach, a figure stepped from shadow as if he belonged to it. Varys moved with the smooth certainty of someone who never feared a knife because he always knew where the knives were. "My lady," he murmured, and his smile held no warmth. "You are far from home." Catelyn's hand went to the hilt of the small blade hidden beneath her cloak. "And you are too close." Varys's eyes glittered. "Oh, I am always close," he said softly. "To secrets, to danger, to sorrow." His gaze flicked to Ser Roderick, noting him with one quick assessment. "Come?" "Lord Eddard Stark has little time and many enemies." Catelyn's heart kicked. "He is alive?" Varys's smile did not change. "Alive," he agreed. "For now." He led them through twisting alleys and back passages that smelled of damp and old refuse, then into a quiet courtyard hidden behind high walls. There, beneath the cover of lemon trees that looked sickly in southern air, Peter Baelish waited as if he were greeting friends for supper. Littlefinger's grin widened when he saw Catelyn. "Cat," he breathed, as if the name belonged on his tongue. Catelyn's expression did not soften. "Peter," he spread his hands. "I would bow," he said lightly, "but I find it makes my back ache to bend to old gods and older women."
Ser Roderick's face darkened.
Catelyn kept her voice controlled. "Why did you bring me here?" Littlefinger's eyes danced. "Because you asked in your letter. Because you have questions. Because you have always had questions, even as a girl." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "And because your husband is in danger." Catelyn's chest tightened. "I know." Littlefinger's gaze sharpened. "Do you?" he murmured. "Do you truly know what kind of danger? The kind that smiles while it slits throats? The kind that wears crowns?" Catelyn thought of Brienne's broken body. "Show me what you know," she said. Littlefinger's grin returned. "As you wish." He led her into his manse, into a room rich with tapestries and candlelight. There he produced the dagger, Valyrian steel, pale as ice, the same weapon that had flashed in her chamber over her son's bed. Catelyn's hands trembled as she held it again. "Who sent it?" she demanded. Littlefinger's voice turned soft, intimate, as if he were telling her a lover's secret. "It belonged to Tyrion Lannister," he said. The name struck like a fist. Catelyn stared at him. "You're certain?" Littlefinger's eyes were very clear. "I would stake my life," he lied smoothly, "that it was his. He won it from me at the tourney on Prince Joffrey's name day." Catelyn's mind lurched. Tyrion Lannister. The imp, the mocker, the one who had looked too long at Winterfell's walls, the one who had smiled at her crippled son as if he found amusement in pain. She had dismissed him as harmless because he was small and clever and drunk. Now the dagger turned that dismissal into a sin. "Why?" she whispered. Littlefinger leaned closer. "Because your son saw something," he said. "Or because he might one day. Because the Lannisters do not leave loose ends. And because your husband has been asking questions that make lions nervous." A chill slid through her. "What questions?" Littlefinger's smile thinned. "Ask Lord Eddard Stark," he murmured. "If you can reach him." Varys cleared his throat lightly, and Catelyn remembered he was there, watching. "We should move," Varys said. "There are ears in every wall." Catelyn's voice went hard. "Take me to my husband." Varys's eyes softened in a way that was almost pity. "Then walk carefully, my lady," he whispered. "The Red Keep is full of traps." They slipped through passages that smelled of old stone and secrets. Catelyn kept her hood low, heart pounding. Somewhere above, She heard the distant roar of a crowd and knew the city was a beast that fed on spectacle. When at last a door opened and she stepped into the Tower of the Hand, the air changed, cleaner, colder, touched with ink and leather. And there, in a room lit by a single window, Eddard Stark turned and saw her. For a heartbeat, he did not move. Then the shock faded and the iron returned. "Catelyn," he said, voice low with relief and dread braided together. "You should not be here." She crossed the room in 2 strides and took his hands, gripping them as if to prove he was real. "They tried to kill Bran," she whispered fiercely. "They sent a man with a Valyrian dagger. Peter says it belonged to Tyrion Lannister." Ned's face went still. "Peter," he said, and there was no affection in the name. "He swore it," Catelyn insisted. Ned cut her off, voice sharp. "Peter Baelish swears like other men breathe." He looked away a moment, jaw working. "But Tyrion Lannister was at Winterfell. The Lannisters are tangled in this." His gaze returned, heavy. "Catelyn, Robert is leave. ING for the hunt tomorrow. The Queen's men move like shadows. And I have found things." Catelyn's breath caught. "What things?" Ned's voice dropped to a whisper. "The Queen's children are not Robert's," he said. "They are Jaime Lannisters." The world seemed to tilt. Catelyn stared, mind struggling to accept such treason. "That is death," Ned finished bleakly. "For all of us, if it becomes known and the wrong hands hold the blade." Catelyn's fingers tightened. "Then we must move," she said. "We must take the children, we must." Ned shook his head once. "We must be careful," he said, "because the king is a hammer, and hammers break what they strike." His eyes held hers. "Go back north. Tell Robb to ready the banners if..." "If what?" she demanded. Ned's face did not soften. "If I do not send for him," he said. "If Robert dies. If the court turns." His hand tightened on hers. "Go, Cat. Now, before you are seen." Catelyn swallowed the fear rising in her throat and forced herself to nod. "I will go," she said, "but I will not leave you without a weapon." She lifted the dagger slightly. "This." Ned's gaze flicked to it, and for a moment something like despair crossed his face. "Every weapon draws blood," he said softly. "See that it draws the right blood." He kissed her forehead, brief, fierce, and then he was already turning away, back into the role that would swallow him. Catelyn left the Tower of the Hand with her heart in her mouth and the city's stink rising to meet her like a tide. Catelyn Stark did not sleep on the road north. When she closed her eyes, she saw Bran falling again and again, saw the assassin's blade, saw Ned's face as he spoke treason in a whisper. The South felt closer now. Not in miles, but in menace, as if the Red Keep's shadow stretched all the way up the King's Road to claw at her heels. She and Ser Roderick rode hard, keeping to lesser paths when they could, taking shelter in small holds where the lords still remembered their vows. But the road could not be avoided forever. It pulled every traveler toward the same inns, the same bridges, the same places where chance liked to pretend it was innocent. The inn at the crossroads was loud when they arrived, a warm bubble of smoke and ale in the cold night. Catelyn kept her hood up, her face turned away from lantern light, trying to be no one. Ser Roderick hovered like a warhorse forced to wear a donkey's bridle. They had nearly reached their table when she heard a familiar voice, dry and amused, as if the world were a joke only he understood. "And I told him, if he meant to stand there looking like a bull that's lost his pasture, he ought to at least learn to moo convincingly." Catelyn froze. Across the room, Tyrion Lannister sat with a cup in hand, his mismatched eyes bright with humor. He looked up as if he felt her stare through the crowd. For a heartbeat, they simply looked at each other. One of them small and smiling, the other cloaked and rigid with a truth that tasted of blood. Littlefinger's lie or truth burned behind Catelyn's eyes. The Valyrian dagger, Bran's broken body, the assassin's hands. Ser Roderick's hand moved toward his sword. "My lady!" Catelyn's breath came sharp. If she walked away, Tyrion would walk free, and the dagger's trail would vanish into Lannister gold. If she struck now, she would light a fire she could not put out. She thought of Ned's words. Every weapon draws blood. She stepped onto the stair landing that overlooked the common room, pulling back her hood. A ripple went through the inn like wind through grain. Faces turned. The noise faltered. Tyrion's smile froze, then widened, as if delighted by the drama. "Lady Stark," he called, voice ringing too clear. "What an unexpected pleasure. I would have sent word if I'd known you were traveling, though I suspect you'd have avoided me." Catelyn's voice came out like steel dragged from a sheath. "I would have," she said, "if I had not been given reason to think you tried to murder my son." The words struck the room dead silent. Tyrion blinked once, slowly. "Now there's an accusation," he said lightly, though his eyes sharpened. "I have done many things in my life that deserve a knife in the dark, but I don't recall trying to kill children. I usually save my cruelty for grown men who can appreciate it." Catelyn's hand rose, pointing at him. "I charge you in the name of the king," she said, and her voice did not shake. "With conspiring to murder Bran Stark, I take you into custody." For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then the inn erupted into motion like a stirred nest. Bronn, the cell's word at Tyrion's side, shifted with a predator's ease, hand dropping to his knife. Tyrion's guard stood, hands on hilts, eyes flicking around, counting numbers. Ser Rodrik drew his sword with a rasp of steel. Men in the room, riverlords and Northmen traveling home, recognized Catelyn despite her disguise. Some rose at once, hands going to weapons, loyalty snapping into place. Tyrion spread his hands slowly, as if calming frightened animals. "Lady Stark," he said, voice still mild. "If this is a jest, it's poor. If it's not, it's worse. You have no proof." Catelyn's heart hammered. Proof was a dagger and a liar's word, and she knew it even as she spoke. But she could not stop now. Not with Bran's pale face living behind her eyes. "I have enough," she said. Tyrion's gaze held hers, and for the first time she saw something beneath the humor. Calculation, danger, the hard core of a Lannister that did not care who called him small. "And if I come quietly?" he asked. Catelyn's fingers curled. "Then you live." Bronn snorted softly, as if amused by the idea that anyone could guarantee such a thing. Tyrion's eyes flicked to him, then back to Catelyn. "Very well," Tyrion said, and his smile returned in a thinner form. "I have always wanted to see the Eyrie. They say it's a lovely place to die." Catelyn felt the inn's air shift. She had taken the imp. She had thrown a torch into dry straw. As she turned to leave with Tyrion surrounded by drawn blades and sworn men, she did not yet know how fast fire traveled through the realm. But the lions would know soon. The ravens flew like black thoughts across the sky, and news rode faster than honor ever could. Catelyn's seizure of Tyrion Lannister reached King's Landing as rumor first, whispers in wine shops, murmurs in the Red Keep's corridors, laughter behind hands. Then it reached the ears that mattered. Ser Jaime Lannister did not laugh. He came for Eddard Stark in the street like a man coming to collect a debt, golden and calm, as if violence were simply another form of conversation. Ned had been leaving a council meeting when the Lannister men blocked the way. The street was narrow, lined with houses that leaned too close like eavesdroppers. Ned's men, Jory Castle, loyal and steady, and a handful of Stark guards, spread instinctively around him. Jaime rode into view at the head of a dozen men, his armor bright even in gray light. His sword was sheathed, but the ease of his posture was threat enough. "My lord," Jaime called pleasantly, as if greeting an old friend. "I hear you've misplaced my brother." Ned's face was stone. "I have no quarrel with you, Ser Jaime," he said. Jaime's smile did not reach his eyes. "That's a pity," he replied, "because I have a quarrel with you."
Nil Esmen shifted.
Jory's hand went to his hilt. Ned's voice stayed controlled. "Your brother is accused of grave crimes. He will have a chance to answer for them." Jaime's gaze sharpened. "By what right does your wife seize a Lannister?" he asked, and though his tone was still mild, the words carried the weight of insult. "By the right of a mother whose son was almost murdered," Ned answered. For a heartbeat, Jaime's expression flickered, something dark passing behind the mask. Then he laughed softly, almost kindly. "Almost," he echoed. "Is that what you call it?" Ned felt the cold move through him then, a warning without words. Jaime's hand lifted, and the Lannister men drew steel as one, the sound like a hiss. Ned's men answered just as quickly, the street filled with sharp metal and shouted names. It happened fast, too fast for courtly rules. A Stark man went down with a scream, clutching his gut. Another took a sword in the shoulder and fell against a wall. Jory Castle shoved forward toward Jaime, loyal fury in his eyes. Jaime met him with effortless grace and drove his blade through Jory's eye as if doing a simple thing. Jory's body crumpled like dropped cloth. Ned's shout tore out of him, grief and rage together, and he surged forward. Jaime turned his horse, sword flashing, and their blades met with a crack of steel that rang off the stones. For a moment it looked like two honorable men dueling in a story. Then Jaime's men moved like wolves, not knights. A spear stabbed in, aimed not at Ned's sword but at his leg. Ned felt a sudden, sickening jolt as the shaft struck and bone gave way. Pain exploded up his body. His vision flashed white, and he fell to one knee, ice half-drawn and useless with his weight gone. Jaime leaned down from his saddle, breath steady. Dysprosium. His sword hovered at Ned's throat. "I told you to give me my brother," Jaime said softly. Ned's teeth clenched against pain. "If you want him," he rasped, "go to the Vale and take him." Jaime's smile turned sharp. "Oh, I will," he murmured. "But first I wanted you to understand something, Stark." His eyes were bright, cold. "You are not in the north." Then, as if bored, he sheathed his sword and pulled his horse back. "Kill his men," he ordered lightly, and turned away as Ned lay bleeding in the street. Gold cloaks watched from the edges, pretending neutrality while bodies fell. And in the red keep above, Queen Cersei Lannister learned that the wolves had bared their teeth. The realm began to crack. There was no clean line between the king's life and his death, only a slow spilling away. Robert Baratheon returned from his hunt smelling of wine and blood, his laughter ragged, his skin damp with fever. The boar had gored him deep, and even Grand Maester Pycelle's hands could not stitch pride back into flesh. The red keep filled with the soft, busy sounds of people preparing for morning while the king still breathed. Ned sat by Robert's bed and watched the man who had been a giant shrink into pain. Robert's eyes wandered, sometimes clear, sometimes glassy. He spoke of Lyanna and of war and of regrets he could not swallow. "You were always the better man," Robert rasped at one point, fingers clutching Ned's wrist with surprising strength. Promise me you'll keep the realm." "I will," Ned said, and meant it. When Robert died, the Red Keep did not fall silent. It shifted, doors closed, voices lowered. Loyal men were pushed aside by men with hungry eyes. Ned moved as he had always moved, straight toward duty. He held Robert's last written command in his hands. The king's seal pressed into wax like a final fist. It named Ned Protector of the Realm until Joffrey came of age. It gave him legal ground, a thin layer of parchment between order and chaos. But parchment could burn. In the throne room, the Iron Throne loomed like a beast made of blades, and beneath it men gathered as if drawn to the promise of power. Ned stood before the court with his leg bound and his face set. Pain throbbed with every heartbeat, but he did not let it show. He lifted the parchment. "By the king's command," he began. Cersei Lannister watched him from near the throne, draped in black so fine it looked like oil. Her mouth was curved in a small, knowing smile. Prince Joffrey, no, King Joffrey now, stood with his chin high, trying to look like Robert had, and failing. His eyes were bright with spite and fear. Ned's voice rang. "Robert Baratheon is dead. His lawful heir is not." The room inhaled. Cersei's smile widened. Ned kept going because truth did not stop being truth because it was dangerous. "Joffrey is not Robert's son," he said, and the words were a sword thrown into a crowd. "The throne belongs to Stannis Baratheon." For a heartbeat, the world held its breath. Then everything moved. Cersei's hand lifted in a lazy gesture. "Seize him," she said, as calmly as ordering wine. Gold cloaks surged forward. Men Ned had believed were sworn to the city, to law. Their commander, Janos Slynt, hesitated only long enough to glance toward Peter Baelish. Littlefinger leaned close, whispering something that made Janos's eyes harden. Ned felt betrayal like ice in his veins. "Littlefinger," he breathed, disbelief cracking his composure. Peter's smile was almost apologetic. "I did warn you not to trust me," he murmured, too softly for most to hear. Steel flashed. Stark men moved to defend Ned, but there were too few of them. A gold cloak drove a spear in. To one, and he went down screaming. Another Stark guard was cut across the face and fell back, blood spraying the floor like spilled wine. Ser Barristan Selmy stepped forward, hand on sword, horror in his eyes. "This is treason," he barked. Cersei's gaze cut toward him, cold enough to freeze water. "Barristan Selmy," she said, "you are dismissed from the Kingsguard." Barristan's face went white. The room seemed to sway around him. Then he turned and walked away with stiff dignity, like a knight leaving a burning hall. Ned's men were slaughtered or disarmed. A spear but slammed into Ned's injured leg, and he went down with a grunt, breath knocked from him. Hands seized him, rough, indifferent, and dragged him forward. Joffrey's face was twisted with triumph. "You traitor," he spat, voice high. "You dared." Ned looked up at him, pain and fury held behind gray eyes. "You are a bastard," Ned said, and the truth was a curse. Joffrey slapped him hard enough to split his lip. Cersei watched, serene. "Take him to the black cells," she ordered. Ned Stark was hauled away under the gaze of the Iron Throne, and above the red keep the banners did not change, but the realm did. A raven flew north with the news, and Winterfell's old stones shuddered as if they had felt the chain pull taut. When the true shape of the southern betrayal reached Winterfell, the hall did not merely roar, it snarled. Robb read the second raven's message with hands that did not shake, though Jon could see how the muscles in his jaw jumped. Seized had become imprisoned. Imprisoned carried the shadow of execution. The words were careful, written by a trembling hand that still feared the Lannisters' reach even as it begged the North to rise. Greatjon Umber did not wait for Robb to finish. He surged forward, towering, face red with fury. "A boy king and a whore queen," he roared. "They take your father and you stand here reading parchment like a maester." Robb's eyes stayed cold. "I stand here because this hall needs a Stark," he said. Greatjon spat. "A Stark." He grabbed Robb by the front of his tunic and yanked him forward as if hauling a pup by the scruff. "I see a green boy playing at lordship." Steel rasped half out of sheaths. Jon stepped forward instantly, hand on his sword, blood roaring in his ears. Ghost moved with him, white head low. "Release him," Jon said, voice sharp as a drawn blade. Greatjon's eyes flicked to Jon, disdain flashing. "And who are you to command me, bastard?" The word hit like a slap Jon had taken his whole life. His hand tightened on his hilt. Robb lifted a hand. "Greatjon," he said, voice controlled but dangerous. "You forget yourself." Greatjon laughed, loud and harsh. "Doi. Or do you forget that a king is made of more than words?" In the same breath, gray wind exploded from beneath the table. The direwolf hit Greatjon's arm with the force of a battering ram, jaws snapping down. Greatjon bellowed as teeth sank into flesh.
Men surged, shouting, rushing for blades.
Robb's voice cut through them like a whip. "Hold!" Gray wind held on, growling low, eyes wild. Greatjon's face contorted, not with fear but with pain and furious respect. Blood ran down his forearm. Jon's heart hammered. He watched Roose Bolton, expecting him to move to take advantage. Bolton merely observed with pale calm, as if watching dice tumble. Robb stepped closer to Grey Wind and laid a hand on the wolf's neck. "Grey Wind," he said quietly. "Enough." The wolf's ears twitched. He released Greatjon slowly, backing away with lips peeled from bloodied teeth. Greatjon staggered back, clutching his torn arm. He stared at the dire wolf, then at Robb, and something like laughter sparked in his eyes. "Real this time." "That," Greatjon said, voice rough, "is a Stark." Robb's face did not soften. "Kneel," he commanded. The hall went very still. Greatjon's grin widened, fierce and delighted, and he dropped to one knee with a thud that shook the flagstones. "I swear it," he growled. "Robb Stark, King in the North." A murmur rippled through the hall at the words, half shock, half hunger. Robb did not accept the title, not yet, but he did not reject it either. His gaze swept the lords, the banners, the wolves. Then he looked at Jon just once, as if check. King that Jon still stood beside him. Jon's throat tightened. He nodded, small and steady. Greatjon lifted his bleeding hand and slammed his fist to his chest. "Lead us south," he roared. "Lead us to lions, and we'll drown them in their own gold." The hall answered with a thunder of voices. Even men who feared rebellion felt the tide pulling them. The South had made its move. The North would answer. And in the middle of it, Jon felt the old insult, bastard, lose some of its sting. Not because the world had changed, but because Robb had. Robb Stark was no longer a boy acting at lordship. He was a war leader, and Jon would be his blade in the dark if the day demanded it. Winterfell watched them leave the way an old mother watched sons walk into war. Silent, fierce, and unable to follow. The yard was packed with men and horses and the sharp tang of sweat beneath cold air. Spears rose like a forest. Shields were strapped tight. Cloaks snapped in the wind, gray and brown and black, stitched with wolf and bear and merman. The sound of it, steel clinking, leather creaking, men murmuring prayers, felt like the castle's heartbeat speeding up. Robb mounted his horse at the gate, face set, eyes forward. Jon swung up beside him, sword at his hip, the weight of it familiar and different now. He had ridden beyond Winterfell before, hunted and traveled, but never like this, not with a host at his back and war ahead. Grey Wind paced in the snow, restless. Ghost ran silent, white fur streaking like a shard of moonlight. From the great keep's window, Bran lay propped against pillows, pale face turned toward the yard. His eyes were open now, awake but changed, darkened with a knowledge that did not belong in a child. Maester Luwin stood near him, one hand resting gently on the boy's shoulder. Jon looked up and met Bran's gaze. Something twisted inside him, guilt and protectiveness and the old helpless fury. He lifted his hand in a brief salute, then forced himself to look away. If he stared too long, he would remember Bran falling. Robb lifted his voice. "Men of the North," he called, and the yard stilled. "My father is held captive by traitors. They will have his life if we do not move. We ride now south to bring him home." A roar answered him. It was not the king's drunken cheer. It was something older, harder, a sound that belonged to wolves and winter. Theon Greyjoy rode behind them, smirking as if this were sport, but Jon caught the tightness around his eyes. Theon knew what war meant. He had seen his own people broken. He had been broken too, just differently. As the gates opened and the first ranks moved out, the sound of hooves on frozen earth rose like thunder. Winterfell's walls slid past, stone familiar and suddenly distant. The world outside waited, white and gray and vast. They rode down the King's Road, banners streaming, breath steaming from men and horses alike. The cold bit cheeks and fingers, but no one complained. The first day's march was fueled by anger and purpose. That night, when they camped beneath bare trees, Robb sat by the fire with his lords gathered close. Jon stayed at his shoulder, listening more than he spoke, as Ned had instructed. Men argued over routes, over speed, over what messages might come next. Some urged sending Theon to treat with the Ironborn, to keep the western seas calm. Jon's gaze slid to Theon across the flames. Theon watched the lords with a practiced smile, but his fingers tapped restlessly against his cup. Robb glanced at Jon. Theon says his father might do what fathers do, Jon cut in quietly. Choose blood over fosterage. The words were blunt enough to make. Robb's mouth tightened. Theon's smile faltered, then sharpened. You think you know my father? Theon asked lightly. How charming. Jon met his eyes. I think I know what men do when they smell weakness, he said, and I won't hand him ours. Robb's gaze held Jon's, long and weighing. Then he nodded once. Theon stays, he said simply. Theon's jaw clenched. For a heartbeat, something dangerous flickered there. Resentment, humiliation. Then he masked it with laughter. As you command, my lord, he said, voice smooth. Jon watched him over the fire and felt unease settle. Keeping Theon close was wiser than sending him home. But it was also like keeping a wolf chained at your feet, safer than letting it run, and still capable of biting. Later, when the camp quieted and only the crackle of coals remained, Robb sat with his back to a tree, staring into the dark. I wanted Mother here, he admitted softly, as if ashamed of needing her. I wanted Father here. He stopped. You have me, Jon said. Robb's head turned. The firelight made his eyes look older. He whispered. Ido. Jon stared at the dark beyond the flames and felt the road stretching ahead like a blade's edge. The south was waiting, and now, for the first time in his life, Jon was walking toward it not as a shadow at the edge of someone else's story, but as part of the spine that would hold the north upright. Moat Cailin rose from the neck like the bones of an ancient giant, broken and half-swallowed by swamp. 3 towers remained, black stone jutting against a sky the color of dirty wool. The air here was damp and sour, thick with the smell of rot and reeds. Fog drifted between the ruins like ghosts that had lost their way. The North's host filled the causeway, a long line of men and horses packed tight because the swamp on either side would swallow them whole. Crannogmen watched from the mist. Small, quiet figures with spears and green cloaks, eyes sharp as marsh hawks. They did not come forward openly, but their presence was felt, the way an arrow was felt before it flew. Robb stood in the gatehouse ruin with his lords crowded around a map weighed down by stones. Mud-streaked boots and cloaks, torches smoked in the wet air. The Riverlands burn, Rickard Karstark growled, stabbing a finger at the map. Lannister raiders, Gregor Clegane, they say, villages put to the torch. Greatjon Umber bared his teeth. Give me 500 men and I'll bring back the mountain's head in a sack. Roose Bolton's pale eyes flicked. And the rest of us will march blind into Lord Tywin's teeth, he murmured. Bravery is not strategy. Jon listened, gaze fixed on the map's thin lines. The neck was the North's throat. If they left it unguarded, the South could pour men into their homeland. If they lingered too long, Ned Stark might die alone in a cell while they measured reeds and mud. A rider arrived at dawn, soaked and shaking. A raven message crumpled in his fist. Robb took it with hands that had grown too steady for his age. Jon watched Robb read. He saw the moment Robb's expression tightened, not with surprise, but with grim confirmation, as if the last hope had finally been strangled. Robb lifted his gaze. My father is in the black cells, he said. They call him traitor. They mean to force him to confess. A murmur ran through the ruin like a chill. Karstark's face twisted with grief and fury. Confess to what? To telling the truth, Jon said quietly, and the Lord's eyes snapped to him. Robb's gaze held Jon's a heartbeat, acknowledging the deeper truth they shared in the crypts. Then he looked back to his lords. To treason, he said, to plotting against the king. Greatjon Umber spat. A boy king born of incest, he snarled, and the word incest made some men flinch as if it were blasphemy. I'll choke on it before I kneel. Roose Bolton's voice stayed mild. Words do not win wars, he said. We must decide our road. Jon leaned in, placing a finger on the map where the King's Road ran south from the neck. "We keep a garrison here," he said. "Enough to hold the causeway and burn it behind any army that tries to pass. The Crannogmen can harry any force that thinks to move through swamp." His eyes flicked to the mist, to the unseen watchers. "They know this land." A voice drifted out of the fog, soft as marsh wind. "We do," it said. A small man stepped from the mist. Howland Reed's son, Jojen, or perhaps another, face solemn, eyes dark. He did not bow deeply, but he nodded once, respect offered and measured. "The bog will eat lions," the Crannogman said calmly, "if you leave us men and fire." Robb studied him, then nodded. "You will have both," he promised. Jon felt a strange relief. Holding the neck meant the north spine would not be exposed. It was the kind of decision Ned would have made. Karstark growled. "And what of the twins?" he demanded. "The bridge is the fastest way into the Riverlands. Walder Frey will not open it for love." Robb's mouth tightened. "Then we give him reason." Greatjon's grin returned. "Gold," he said. "Not only gold," Roose Bolton murmured, eyes half-lidded. "The Freys love marriage as much as they love coin." Robb's gaze turned distant, and Jon saw the trap forming. Walder Frey's price would not be a simple toll. It would be a hook in their flesh. Jon's voice dropped, meant for Robb alone. "When we reach the twins, we bind the bargain tight," he murmured. "Written terms, hostages,
No vage promises.
no room for Frey twisting." Robb's eyes flicked to him. "Aye," he said softly. They left Moat Cailin under gray skies, marching south along the causeway with swamp sucking at the edges of their world. Crannogmen vanished back into mist, shadows with spears, guardians of the North's throat. Jon rode beside Robb as they emerged from the neck into clearer land, and for the first time he saw smoke on the horizon that did not come from northern hearths. War had already begun. They were only arriving to meet it. The Riverlands greeted them with ash. They passed burned farms where blackened beams stuck up like broken ribs. They passed fields trampled into mud by hooves and boots, strewn with dead crows' fat from feeding. Once, they found a village where bodies still lay in the street because no one remained to bury them. Men with throats cut, women with empty eyes, a child curled in a doorway as if sleeping. Robb ordered the dead covered. He ordered prayers spoken. He ordered the men not to loot what little the villagers had left. His voice stayed steady, but Jon saw how his hands clenched when he thought no one watched. "These are not our people," a man muttered one night, staring at the ruins. Jon turned on him, cold fury flaring. "They are people," he snapped, "and if we let lions do this here, they will do it in the north next." The man looked away, ashamed. Jon felt no satisfaction, only the hardening certainty that mercy without strength was an invitation. At last, the green fork of the trident came into view, wide and gray under winter skies, and beyond it the towers of the twins rose like two fists. The bridge stretched between them, the only easy crossing for leagues. On its walls, Walder Frey's banners snapped in the wind, blue and gray with the twin towers' sigil, arrogant in its control. The host slowed, the tension rising as if the very air thickened. Greatjon Umber gripped his axe, eager to hack his way through stone if he had to. Karstark's men muttered vengeance. Roose Bolton watched quietly, expression unreadable. Robb rode at the front with Jon beside him. Gray wind and ghost trotted together, wolves moving with different rhythms, one restless, one silent. Yet their ears were forward in the same wary alertness. Robb's eyes stayed on the bridge. "Walder Frey will make us beg," he said softly. Jon's gaze narrowed. "Then we don't beg," he replied. "We bargain." Robb exhaled. "And if his price is too high?" Jon thought of the map, of time bleeding away in Ned's cell. He thought of the crypts, of Lyanna's stone eyes, of the truth about Jaime burning like coals beneath his ribs. "He will demand what he thinks you cannot give," Jon said. "So give him what costs you least and binds him most." Robb's mouth tightened. "Marriage," Jon did not flinch from the word. He had known it was coming, the hook a man like Walder Frey would choose. "Aye," he said, and words on parchment that he cannot twist when it suits him. Robb's gaze slid to Jon. There was something unsaid there, something heavy. In another life, Jon might have walked away from such bargains by taking the black. Here he had stayed. Here he belonged enough to be used. "If he asks for you," Robb said quietly, and Jon heard the reluctance in it. Jon's face remained still. "If it saves father," he answered. "Ask me." Robb's eyes widened a fraction. "Jon." Jon cut him off, voice low and hard. "You said you didn't want to fight alone," he murmured. "Then don't. Let me carry someth. And G2. Robb stared at him for a long moment, the wind tugging at his cloak. Then he nodded once, sharp as if agreeing hurt. They reined in before the Frey outer gate. A horn sounded from the wall, one long note, like an insult drawn out. Men appeared atop the battlements, peering down as if judging livestock. Robb lifted his chin, and his voice carried. "Tell Lord Walder Frey," he called, "that Robb Stark has come to treat." The gate did not open. Not yet. Above, a Frey man leaned over the parapet and shouted back something lost in wind and distance, laughter following like a thrown stone. Robb's jaw clenched. Jon's hand rested near his sword, not drawing it. Not yet. Patience was a weapon too, and the Freys loved to test whether a man knew how to hold it. Behind them, the North's host waited, a wall of cold steel and colder resolve. Ahead, the twins loomed, and within those towers sat an old man who would sell passage the way other men sold bread. Jon looked at the bridge and felt the shape of the next knife-edge decision forming. They had reached the first gate of the Riverlands. The rest of the realm waited beyond it, burning, bleeding, and hungry.